Hey y'all, it's your wonderful booker Deanna here, and welcome back to Taking Time Out. If you are new to Taking Time Out, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you can be one of the first to know about any new and upcoming content that will be coming out. If you have been keeping up with your wonderful booker and these wonderful adventures, welcome back. How's quarantine treating you? What you been up to? So, in light of everything that's going on, with everyone being on quarantine and the world being on lockdown, I figure we take an opportunity to focus on what has everyone up in arms. We're going to talk about it at length, which is why I had to separate this episode into two parts because it is so lengthy and there's so many points that need to be discussed that I couldn't fit it in, or I couldn't fit it all in on one episode. So we're doing two. And this week I have a special guest. I can't wait for you guys to see who it is. And without further ado, here we go. Hey, my wonderful bookers. How's it going? Thanks for tuning back in to Taking Time Out. We have a special guest today to the right of me. Let's introduce ourselves.
I'm Clarence Woodley. I'm Dearest brother.
And today we are here to talk about the C word. Why are we calling it the C word today?
YouTube hates it for some reason. Unless you're one of the mass media outlets, they don't want you to say it. So I'm going to try to make sure that, whenever we refer to the thing that's keeping us all in, that we use other words, context clues and whatnot.
All right, but at the end of the day, you know exactly what we're talking about. So first and foremost, we want to start with exactly what it is.
Now, I'm not a medical expert or anything, and I'm sure that there's plenty of time people can use to look it up. But what the thing is basically a virus that leads to a disease. So what we're trying to not catch is basically a virus that like hangs in the air and on top of stuff that ruins your immune system, specifically in your respiratory tract. And once it does that, then you get the disease that everybody's worried about it. There's apparently a whole family of diseases related to upper respiratory tract infection or something like that. And that's what we're all trying to avoid.
All right. And then how long has the U.S. government been aware of this situation?
The upper echelons of it, that is Orange Boy in office, should have known about it since at least the end of December, but he's an idiot. So who knows when he actually remembered the word. There's stories about people trying to get in contact with him that were unable to because he refused to talk about it. There's a guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who took a while, like weeks, to get in contact with him. And then when he finally did, all the president did was ask about just something completely else, something about election or something like that.
And then how long have you been keeping up with everything that's been going on?
Well, it comes in stages. Since I generally listen out for various things that are happening, I've technically known since they started talking about how a new disease, a new kind of SARS, erupted in China, but I didn't think it was a big deal until February. I was listening in on it and I knew that things were going on, but like things didn't get like serious until like the beginning of February, when people started like rumbling like, oh, this stuff is spreading outside of China.
Okay, so we've talked about what it is. We've talked about roughly about how long, our U.S. government has known about it. And now we want to talk about why it is more serious than the flu or the common cold.
Most of the reason, the biggest concern about it is that it kills more people than the flu. I think they were saying something like 10, 20, 30 times the amount. So it's more deadly than the flu. Like, unfortunately, I had a percentage before now, but over the weekend I found out that we actually can't know how deadly this disease is. There are varying numbers in varying countries under varying conditions. I've heard anywhere between 1%, which means 1 in 100 people essentially, to 3% or even 4% in some cases. We can't actually know because we don't know how many people have died from it. There have been people who were misdiagnosed with having pneumonia or SARS, who might have had actually the virus in question. We also don't know how many people actually have it right now because testing has been very ramshackled. Italy has had to close everything down because they were so late and so bad about keeping it contained or even testing people for it. So we're looking at a disease that may kill 1 in 100 people, which times a billion, couple billion people is a lot of people. Right now, the second issue is that how communicable it is. It has an insane air hang time, like something like 3 hours. So if someone who has it breathes it out in the air, you can walk by the same space 3 hours later and catch it. Surfaces can survive on surfaces for a long time. It seems to be resistant against changes in temperature. So far, we're not really sure. But it's the deadly part of it is how many people it kills in conjunction with how communicable it is. There are Navy ships that are supposed to be floating hospitals that can't take people in because of the hang time of the virus.
What I want to actually directly ask is how exactly can you catch the C word?
Exactly how you catch the flu. You touch it, it stays on you. You don't. That's why you're not supposed to be like me and keep your hands near your face. But I'm disinfected right now. But it can get into any of your orifices. Usually, like you don't want it near your mouth or your nose or anything like that. So that's why you're supposed to keep your hands away from your face. That's why people are wearing masks and stuff. Hopefully you're not in an area where anybody's infected, of course. 'Cause that's why we're social distancing right now. Because if you're not in the area, you don't have to worry about those kind of things. But if you're touching things that other people are touching, you want to keep your hands washed. You want to keep your hands away from your mouth just in case you missed anything. Um, Stuff like that.
Sanitize your surfaces, hand sanitizer, disinfectant, uh, clean as often as you can.
Basically treat it as a more deadly flu.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things that technically you should be doing to avoid catching the flu.
Already, you should be doing this stuff already. So the fact that we have to constantly remind people to not touch their face or to wash their hands
Don't
or
cough in other people's mouths.
yeah, or just stay home when you're sick. Like these are all things that we should have already been doing, but I think us as a country or just as a civilization are so used to just pushing through illnesses and going on about our day as though nothing is going on is a force of habit, and it should not have been this way, but unfortunately it is. So now all we can do is be accountable for ourselves and take the measures or methods necessary to prevent the spread of it. We are trying to flatten the curve. So make sure you are constantly practicing social distancing. Only go out if you absolutely have to. And just stay at home. Make the most of this time.
Yeah, to touch on what flatten the curve means, because I know people use it a lot and probably don't understand it. Infection rates can be exponential. So when people are talking about flatten the curve, there's a certain peak that we're hoping to reach so that enough people can get like better immune to it so that less people start to get infected and die from it. Something like a herd immunity after we've reached the peak. Vaccines can help with that, but that's what flatten the curve means, because one person can infect any number of people, and then those people can go on and infect more people. It's an exponential explosion, and we want to keep that down. So that's what that means.
But more importantly, you can catch it again.
Yeah. They've discovered that you can recatch it. They've even discovered that a lot of people may be asymptomatic, which means you could have it, not suffer from it, and carry it on the other people. So you may be fine, because the concern isn't just about you, it's about other people you come in contact with.
Before it exploded out of the water and ruined everybody's springtime and spring breaks and whatever we had plans for, before all of it hit the fan, what could have been done in order to decrease the
spread, to mitigate it?
yeah.
Any number of things. If you look it up, there is a timeline for the president's response to the current situation.
What can you look that up on?
Google, you can Google it up.
Okay.
It's easy to find. People were passing it around, but off the top of my head, and I could rant for at least an hour and a half on all of the many failures of this administration specifically and especially. But off the top of my head, in 2018, I believe he defunded the task force meant to deal with pandemics. Now, technically, they were going to run out of funding during that, but that's a problem with how our government deals with stuff and forces like that. Every so often, they have to reassign the money, and if the current administration doesn't want to do that, we lose it. So Trump didn't want to fund it, so we lost it. There were various experts going up into January and February that were warning about a potential new SARS outbreak that were fired by the president before we all knew about it. He defunded the CDC, which is just something that they like to do. They defund anything that they don't think applies. There's a bunch of other stuff that happened where they moved the offices for our research and development, basically our science people. They moved it from Washington pretty much out of spite. But that isn't necessarily involved in this disease. That's just something that slowed our eventual ability to grasp what we were dealing with. So Trump then, even though there was a meeting amongst the higher ups about what was going on, Trump didn't pay any attention to it. I believe there are 4 senators now who are going to be looked into for insider trading because they found out what was happening and, switched around a few stocks because they knew this was going to hit. There's even one who called up a meeting amongst his other similarly rich people to warn them yeah, bad stuff is coming, so you might want to sell some of your stocks off. So they knew it was serious. They knew it was going to be serious, but our president specifically didn't want to do anything about it. He put a muzzle order on anybody who was going to speak out about it, and with his known propensity for firing people followed that. He denied cruise liners from docking so that the numbers didn't shoot up. He didn't want to talk about how big the numbers were because any increase in numbers would make him look bad. I mean, even recently, he let go of a naval officer who warned that there was a legit danger to the Navy of people coming on board with the disease. And why would you do that? So there's a lot of governments that are suffering from the spread of the disease, but this administration has been particularly bad at responding to it. No one really expects the president to turn into a doctor the minute a pandemic hits. So it's really easy for the president to just get on camera and tell everybody what his experts tell him we should do. And this president, the idiot that he is, decided not to do that. We have had one of the worst responses to this virus, and the implications on down the road are so radical, I can't even guess at what's going to happen.
So, of all the bad, sad, and terrible news that we've been seeing and hearing, all the deaths, all the new cases, all the jobless people that are out there wondering what's next, is there any positive news in all of this?
The only positive news I can think of is what could potentially happen now that people are seeing a kind of paradigm shift in how we do things. The positiveness will come if people can realize that things like rent striking that people are talking about right now, forming stronger unions to try and get better pay, talking about how essential workers or the workers that people kind of wrote off and said, like, why do they need a $15 minimum wage when anybody can do their job? And now that they're essential, now that we know that if they're not working, the country essentially comes to a stop, all those questions about why people should get being paid more are a lot more easy to talk about now that people are faced with the fact that if they weren't working, the nation essentially stops. So this is a chance, and I joke, but like this is the revolution. These are the kind of conditions a revolution can take place in. The government is about to give out money to people, something that was like considered a wild unicorn dream. Andrew Yang was talking about a UBI, and now we understand that, hey, something might happen in the future that, you know, kind of makes a lot of people unable to work, unable to earn what they used to, unable to provide for their families. And maybe, just maybe, we should do something. The government should be responsible for making sure people stay up. So it's all potential. If people take any good lessons from this and move to actually get the government to do stuff, that would be wonderful.
All right, you guys, we are going to wrap up this week's episode of Taking Time Out with your wonderful Booker here and the Big Bro. Today we talked about this ongoing pandemic, what it is, how we got here,
the government's response to it or lack thereof, and a few positive things that we might learn from this, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yes. So we are going to do a part 2 of today's episode coming to you next week with a more updated outlook on how things are going, the administration's response to the pandemic, as well as a couple of rants by old boy over here because he's been raring to go. But we'll definitely have more camera time. I can't wait to see you guys again next week on Taking Time Out. Bye.
Bye. See you next time.